Recently, the world lost Brazilian football legend Pelé, who died at the age of 82 after a long battle with colon cancer. Many prominent personalities have likewise succumbed to the cold hands of death through advanced cases of cancer. Over time, medical science has been able to identify and separate cancer into categories, ranging from the benign to the most malignant. How can people be made more aware of the risk and dangers of cancer? Well, Moji Animashaun is founder and executive director of St. Cyril Cancer Treatment Foundation. She joins us now to discuss the imperative of creating awareness about cancer screening and early treatment in Nigeria. Great to have you on Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So what more can you tell us about the importance of screening and early diagnosis in cancer treatment? How accessible and affordable is it in Nigeria?
In terms of awareness and screening, the cheapest forms of treatment of cancer, as you say, because it means that you catch the disease early or you reduce the risk of the patient having the disease in case of like cervical cancer, something like that. But awareness and screening ensure that the patient has a better fighting chance, especially in Nigeria where we don't have that many treatment centers. So if you can prevent the patient getting to the point where they're going to need treatment, the better for them.
Very good, madam. Now, we've discussed cancer awareness scenarios before. I would like you to educate us. Where are we with that in Nigeria? How informed is the public on this ailment? Because we always discuss about cancer awareness, but what about the other side, the people that we're talking about? How informed are they from your experience with your foundation?
The populace in Nigeria actually are striving and making a lot of efforts, from the market women to the educated people educators and people in schools and things like that. There's a lot of awareness going on, but 200 million people is a lot to cover.
You can say that
and a lot of work is being done by the government, yes, but a whole lot more is also being done by the NGOs, who are taking up the slack because it's virtually impossible for the government to do it by themselves. So the NGOs are doing a lot of work in terms of awareness and screening. But where we scratch the surface, but not very deep in terms of rural areas. The urban areas, maybe we're making some kind of impression, but in the rural areas, I think we still have a lot of work to do. We have so many languages in Nigeria, so it's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
Okay, so what are some of the most prevalent forms of cancer that we have in Nigeria? And I'm going to repeat my earlier question about how affordable and accessible is it to go for screening? Are there routine screening? Are there special screening that people have to go for, men, women? Just educate us some more.
The awareness is NGOs putting together or government putting together information and disseminating it to people. That's usually free. A lot of the times there's a lot of screening that's done free as well, but then you have screening that's from the cervical screening, which is can be as low as 1,000 naira, and then you have at the other end of the spectrum, you're talking about Pelé, the colonoscopy that is required for that is then you're running into tens of thousands of naira because the patient needs to be anesthetized and things like that. So there's a huge gap depending on what's the disease. Cancer covers a lot of diseases. It can go into any organ, but the diagnosis and screening for everyone, each one is different. The amounts that it costs are different. So it's a very varied, wide topic, but it can go, like I said, from 1,000 to 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 naira.
Very wide topic indeed. Now, beyond awareness, what is next? How imperative is treatment? Is the public health sector proactive on this? Now, I'm talking about the public health sector here because, yes, you find so many private hospitals, specialist hospitals, with cervical or what have you. But when it comes to public health and accessibility, based on what she said earlier, so where are we?
We're very far away. You're smiling because you probably have an idea of what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near where we need to be. We should have, according to the WHO, we should have for each million people in any population, not each million with cancer, but in a population, we should have one comprehensive cancer treatment center. So in Nigeria, in effect, we should have about 200. We don't have up to 10. So that's the disparity that you're talking about. And then out of those 10, less than 10, we're talking about 2 or 3 of them belong to private sector. So it's a long road to get to a significant number by the public health.
How can we get to where we should be?
To get there, I am, and my personal opinion is that the government should work hand in hand tirelessly with organizations who want to be able to do, because majority of these people that we're talking about, many of them are not the ones who can go to India or can go to South Africa or the US for their treatment. They have to have treatment here. So we have to cater to that majority of people and ensure that we have quality treatment, quality centers for them that is not breaking the bank, not for somebody who has to pay that back their money. So for some people, centers are a business, so they have to make a profit. They have to pay their the people who have invested in the organization. But we have to have less and less of those, which is where NGOs like St. Cyril come in, because our main area of concentration is cancer treatment. So we're building centers to ensure that people can get quality care, but at not an amount that is prohibitive, and also we help them to find creative ways of finding finances for their treatment. And we have to have that across the board. Otherwise, it's going to be a longer road to get to where we need to be.
So as a foundation, what drives, your ability or your zeal to engage in cancer treatment, awareness, or what have you? And is there profit motivation behind this? It's just the drive for it.
Me, now I'm going to speak for myself here. Personally, right. My profession, I'm a radiation therapist. Okay. I'm one of those who treat cancer patients. I've been doing this for almost more than 40 years. Whew. That's a long time. So for me, I've worked in different parts of the world, and when I've gone and come back, our numbers in terms of treatment centers were not moving. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop complaining. I'm going to go into the foray and ensure that this thing is done. For me, the satisfaction for me is that at this point in my life, my children are grown. I don't have to pay school fees and things like that. The satisfaction for me is ensuring that woman, like we talked about, the market woman, who would hear a cancer diagnosis and they just literally leave it. It just grows and grows because they can't even fathom looking for 2-3 million naira. But when they come to us and we actually see them, okay, ask this cousin, ask this brother, ask this sister, okay, we will look for this for you. And they can actually see a hope. For me, that's my satisfaction.
So can cancer be prevented? Is there any way people can lower their risk, of contracting this disease?
Lowering the risk and prevention, you can lower the risk by eating well, being healthy, not being excessive fatty things, eating things that are as fresh as possible. Preventive, you have the HPV, that's the cancer of the cervix. This is cervical cancer month, actually, is the only one that actually can be prevented by a vaccine right now that's being used all over the world in catching young ladies and young boys to be able to prevent cancer by using the HPV vaccination. But by and large, it's not.
Very good. Sometimes when you hear about cancer, it's like a death sentence in some cases. But you've actually seen scenarios whereby people have actually survived, cancer through various forms of treatment. So what do you have to say about that narrative and also being positive about the ailment itself, despite its prevalence in the country?
It's changing one patient at a time. More and more patients can actually say before, now that, oh, I have cancer, I have breast cancer, I'm going for treatment, and they look healthy. So the more of those people that we see, the better it is for the next person who gets it. But cancer is not going away anytime soon. We have to learn to live with it. But the taboo before was that, you didn't hear anything until the person died, and then they were whispering, oh, she died of cancer. And so there's that shrouding. We had the same issue with AIDS at some point, but now that it's more open, so the more open it is, the more people are more inclined to want to ask and make inquiries. And if they get that lump in their breast or they're bleeding from their vagina, they want to go and find out what is wrong with them rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I'm dead. And the more healthy people they see who have gone through the treatment and come out and said, I've come out the other side and I'm still living. I have patients that I treated even in 1984 with cobalt equipment, which we are talking, and now I'm dating myself, which is the least, and they are still alive and well today. So if you do it properly and you give the treatment, that's why the treatment is so important. It's not the actual disease that kills, it's the management of it, I think, a lot of the times in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we've already talked about some of the symptoms. You talked about the lump, bleeding, but are there any other symptoms to watch out for, in preventing or in getting to the doctors early if one has cancer?
Okay. What I always say to people is that if you make sure you recognize, your well self from the top of your head to the soles of your feet, because cancer can come anywhere except for your nails. As long as the cells that are living there, you can get cancer. One can get cancer in that place. So the important thing is that you know yourself when you're well. If your period is usually 4 days and all of a sudden it becomes 6, 7, 8 days, go to the doctor. Most of the time it's probably not cancer, but you need to, that one time that it is, you need to find out. A lot of the times, the breast, again, the lump, if you have diarrhea, and it just keeps recurring, and you're not eating vegetable, or it just comes up over and over and over again, or you feel uncomfortable in yourself, go and find out. It's best to find out and because the only way that you have a fighting chance is when it is caught early. So the earlier one goes to the doctor, the earlier they can start making the investigation, the earlier the treatment can start, and the better the chances of the patient. It's not rocket science. It's a mathematical equation.
It's full of data and all that. All right. As an NGO, what challenges have you faced, in terms of advocacy or the awareness and treatment, what have you? So what challenges are the most prevalent in your operations regarding that?
Aside from the fact that, I've perfected the art of begging.
To a large extent.
But the challenge is, the main challenge for NGOs, a lot of NGOs, is funding. Finding ways, trying to convince, actually, more funding is the end of the road, but trying to talk to people and letting them see. Our culture has not been one of
giving.
No, we give, but not in terms of fundraising for something like this. If your cousin comes to you and says they want to pay their child's school fees and you can't help, you will always help. We have that in our community, but in terms of, this is fundraising, like in the US or the UK, where you have people who fundraise for other people that they don't know about. Nigerians were not quite as conversant with that yet. So convincing people day to day, like with our own, the way we're trying to get our cancer center going is getting people to donate once a month into an account to be able to build this comprehensive cancer center. So it's almost like going from one person to another, to another, to another, to be able to do it. But it's every day it gets better. I'm the world's best optimist, and that helps me in going day to day. But funding and getting people educated about the needs for those funds, and then transparency, and then having less NGOs who abuse that.
Exactly. I was just going to talk about that, because you talked about the challenges of raising funds and all. But, but there are some people that believe that some NGOs, if not quite a large number of NGOs, are actually just a cover, for people to maybe embezzle money, So how do you deal with that? How do you change that narrative?
From abroad.
Yes. Yeah. Transparency. You can't do it right from the beginning. This is our 10th year. We've always, from 2015, we've had our books audited, we've had our accounts, we have our accounts every year, year in, year out. When we get funds, we show what we've done with it. We write reports to the people who have given us money. They come, we raised funds for the clinic, our clinic in Lagos. We showed people as we were doing it, we showed when it was done. So transparency is key. As long as they can see it, and they can see and you can walk tall, because you can say this is what I've done with your money, and convince them. Once they are convinced, they will give you money again, or they will ask you questions. But I think which is the NGO from the beginning has to manage the integrity, because it's important.
You're right. Integrity and trust is key. Mrs. Moji Sola, Animashaun founder, executive director, Serial Cancer Treatment Foundation, many thanks for joining us on Newsday to educate us on advocacy, treatment, as it were. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.